Well, greetings, my imagination connoisseurs, and you all, the members of the Post-Geek Singularity community. Hello on what is for me a Sunday afternoon. I am supposed to be at WonderCon right now doing another Starship Smackdown in an hour. Unfortunately, I had my final sound delivery today for Tango Shalom, where I had to get everything ready to go and out the door to Steve Yeaman, the sound designer, who is going to turn the film. For the last 3 years I've been working on this movie, I've done all of the sound design myself. I even did a Temp 5.1 stereo surround mix. So when we showed the film to people, especially in a theater, it would feel full. Because despite what anyone says in the motion picture business, as veteran as they are, unless they've actually made a film, if you talk to agents, you talk to producers, I don't care who it is, and they're like, oh, yeah. I get it when I'm watching an unfinished movie. I understand. No, they don't. If you're not a director and you're not an editor, or you've never participated in that process, you don't know. And what I mean by that is, like, for instance, if someone's supposed to hear a door knock and there's no actual door knock in the film, people will bump on that. Even the most experienced Hollywood people will be like, oh, you'll put a door knock in there, right? Yes, you will. So in my experience, it is never good to show anybody an unfinished movie in any form, because they can't make the leap of what it's going to look like when it's finished. That's why there is no Zack Snyder cut, people. There's no Zack Snyder cut. Yeah, you might have a picture cut, but there's no visual effects. There's certainly no sound mix. There's no score. Just because he's finished an actual edit of the film, you're nowhere near the process of finishing the movie, and it's certainly not in any position to be watched. And I wish people understood that. Gilbert has kind of understood that, because he's watched me work on this computer for hours and hours and hours on end. So anyway, I should be at WonderCon. I'm not, because it took me longer to deliver finally today. There were some extra things I had to download to the computer, but I am done. That means the picture is now with the colorist. Sound is with the sound designers, all the production audio, all the dialogue, everything. And it'll probably take, I would imagine, 2 months before we'll see a reasonable mix of the film. Of course, we haven't even begun scoring it yet. That's a whole other issue. So anyway, I should be at WonderCon, but I'm instead here with you, the Post-Geek Singularity community, to talk about some cool things. One of them, the main topic of this discussion, was inspired by what? Yes, another letter I received. I cannot get enough of the letters you send me. They are fantastic. So I'm going to start out by reading some letters from people. The first one comes from, this is a short one, comes from Terry Flynn. Terry Flynn says, Dear Rob, I hope you had fun at the convention. I did yesterday. The Inglorious Trexperts podcast was a lot of fun. We were recorded live in a seminar room with David Lowery, the writer of he wrote Dreamscape, the 1984 film with Dennis Quaid and David Patrick Kelly, which I liked, Dreamscape. And he also, of course, wrote Star Trek V. You'll be able to hear that interview, that seminar, that discussion later on the Inglorious Trexperts. So there you go. So Terry says, Dear Rob, hope you had fun at the convention. I just had one of those idle thoughts one has and wondered if it is something you two have ever considered. It is the following. Have you ever watched a sci-fi movie or series which so quickly had major characters do such incredibly stupid stuff that you instantly want them to die horribly at the hands of whatever evil force or beings that you were supposed to hate? Episode 1 of The Rain had me hating the kids and parents and really wishing the rain would cause them to melt. So I don't feel any obligation to give the show a fair go. I think there's a real market for films showing stupid protagonists dying horribly. Kind regards, Terry. Well, Terry, that certainly put a smile on my face. I try not to, because life is too short and there's so much great content out there I'd like to get to. But look, I watched every episode of The Leftovers because, I love genre stories, and I'm always part of the attraction to me for the stories is to figure out what's going on, and then once the premise is understood, you wonder what the author is going to do with that premise. For instance, I dearly love writer Jonathan Mayberry's Joe Ledger series of novels. And basically, Joe Ledger works for the DMS, a fictitious organization, the Department of Military Science. and its mysterious leader, Mr. Church. And I love these books. And what he does, he tries to set old horror tropes, whether it's zombies or vampires or mutants, Cthulhu, UFOs. I mean, and he takes those tropes and then reworks them and tries to set them in the real world and make them utterly believable. Yes, even Cthulhu. And I love these books. And one of the great things about these books is they're very, I say convoluted in a good way. They've got these sprawling epic stories that unfold. And I dearly love these books, and I love to see how they unfold and what he's going to do with this premise. And for the most part, he's never disappointed. And I've really enjoyed his books quite a bit. His last book that came out was Deep Silence, which ended on somewhat of he shook things up, shook up the status quo. But I highly recommend, if you like classic horror, whether it's zombies or Universal monster movies or even Aliens or H.P. Lovecraft, and you like action and globetrotting and great megalomaniacs. I mean, it's basically X-Files meets James Bond meets global horror. It's great. I love them. But I'm always wondering, like, I don't hate these books at all. I love them, but I love to see where they go. What I can't stand is when a beautiful premise is not lived up to. And even the authors, even the writers don't understand the premise. Or, as in the case of Star Trek Discovery, that premise shifts all the time. I don't like that. But like, I watched all of The Leftovers because why did this happen? And, it was based on a pretty good book that I had read, but the book didn't explain it. But with the series, you don't have that luxury. And it went on. And while I appreciate the actors, I love the cast, it kept me coming back. I thought because they never understood what the premise was, it drove me berserk. And I kept watching it. But, hate watching isn't healthy in the long run. Life's too short. You should watch what you love. But I think that's interesting. I think it was funny. Now, the next, would you be surprised if I told you that this next letter is from the great Willow Yang? It is. Willow sent me another letter, and it's a different letter than the last letter she sent. So hold on with the last two. But it's a great letter nonetheless. Love this letter. Love Willow's letters. I really do. So this is from Willow Yang again. Greetings, Rob. In the video, Our Fans Idolaters last week, you asked the question, who's going to read Watchmen? I mean, let's face it, it was a comic that came out in 1986. By the way, one of my favorite comic books of all time. Willow goes on, Watchmen is a special comic to me, and I'd like to share with you the story of how I was introduced to it back in the mid-2000s. Spoiler alert, it was through John. John is her old friend, her old high school friend. Yes, him again. It was because of John that I read Watchmen, and it was because of Watchmen that I gained an appreciation for comic books. I'll be honest with you. For the longest time, my friends and I held a prejudice toward the Western superhero genre. The prevailing perception we had was that comic books were vapid and superficial, whereas manga and anime were more mature, with deeper themes and more rounded characters. Batman Begins came out when I was in grade 8. Christopher Nolan may be a giant now, but he was still relatively unknown back then. I didn't know what kind of filmmaker he was. I asked my friend if she was interested in seeing the movie after reading about it in our school newspaper. She responded somewhere in the vein of, we already know what's going to happen. He's just going to beat up the bad guy and save the girl. It's so cliche. It didn't help that our newspaper included a picture of Bale's Batman carrying an incapacitated Rachel Dawes, a seemingly prevalent trope in the superhero genre at that time. Mary Jane Watson. Of course, we did end up singing a very different tune when we saw The Dark Knight, but that was a few years down the road. The first time I heard of Watchmen was during another English class. The teacher had asked the students to recommend books for their peers to read. John, being the boisterous, outgoing guy he was, volunteered as usual. He said, and I'm paraphrasing, of course, this happened over 10 years ago, I'm reading this graphic novel called Watchmen. It's about this group of superheroes, only none of them actually have any powers, except for this blue guy who's naked a lot. That wasn't exactly the best description of Watchmen he could have given, but it did make a couple of teenage girls like my friend and I curious. And I swear, it's not just because we wanted to see a nude blue guy. We decided to borrow a copy from our school library just to find out what the hell John's talking about. I know it's cliche to say Watchmen blew our minds, but that was exactly what it did. You weren't alone. I was astonished by the grittiness and violence that was being depicted in the panels. The heroes were damaged, flawed, and sometimes just despicable. There was a lot of mature and difficult subject matter being explored, and the conclusion was simply jaw-dropping. I was left baffled. I couldn't comprehend what I just read. I spent weeks discussing and debating over the book with my friends and with John. He likes to eavesdrop on our conversations. Watchmen had turned our preconceived notions about the Western superhero genre upside down. Rorschach became my friend's favorite comic book character. She actually dressed up as him for Halloween once. It was at that moment we began taking comic books more seriously. I like to think that I've become more open-minded over the years. I don't believe that everything has to be dark and gritty to be meaningful. I love Nolan's Dark Knight trilogy and Dread, the Carl Urban version, of course, but I also love Thor Ragnarok, Guardians of the Galaxy, Aquaman, and I'm very much looking forward to seeing Shazam. But it was Watchmen that first shattered my stereotype of Western superheroes that made me realize that comics can be so much more than just beating up the bad guy and saving the girl. Not that there's anything wrong if you enjoy that sort of story. And because of that, Watchmen will always have a special place in my heart. Reflecting back now, I think that John might have had the greatest influence on my dive into Western geekdom. I regret that I didn't know him better. We did hang out and collaborate on a few projects in high school, but we were never really close friends. I found him to be a bit of a screwball sometimes. I've never been to his house or met his family or asked him anything about life outside of school. I wonder how he'd gotten into Star Trek and Star Wars or picked up a comic like Watchmen. Did he have family and friends that introduced him to all of this, or did he discover them on his own? Regardless of how John came to be, I do hope that people like him will continue to exist and introduce new generations to Watchmen and other great gems from our yesteryears, just as he had done for me and my friends. Yours sincerely, Willow. Can't get enough of these letters from Willow. I cannot. I love this letter because, I went to the comic book store every Wednesday by this point in my life. This came out in 86, so I was already in college. But I went religiously. And I was already an Alan Moore fan because of Swamp Thing and V for Vendetta. Although I think I found V for Vendetta maybe after Watchmen. So maybe I'm lying to you right now, but I don't I don't actually remember. But I love stories like this, and Watchmen to me is one of the great superhero stories ever written because not only does it delve into superheroes and what that would mean, but it also delves into the comic book medium, all of its tropes, and it really deconstructs what comic books are, what those heroes really are. As a matter of fact, I think it's issue 5 that reads panel-wise. The issue is called, the title is Fearful Symmetry. And the actual comic itself, from beginning to end, has the same panel design. You get to halfway through the book, and then it completes. And if you look from the back to the front, the panel design's exactly the same. It's a mirror image. It's amazing. That comic book is amazing. And sure, I understand that the climax was taken from the Outer Limits episode, The Architects of Fear. I get that. It doesn't bother me. I think it's great. Love it. Really looking forward to what Damon Lindelof is doing with the Watchmen, even though he was one of the masterminds behind the Leftovers series. And I like to hate watch Damon Lindelof stuff. I don't know why. At least he shoots high, even though he might fail dismally. I can't wait to see what they do with this Watchmen series. Really interested. Now, this next letter discussed something that I never knew about. And I will be honest with you, I still don't know anything about it, but I'm going to read you a few things I found after a cursory glance at the interwebs. God love them. But this letter comes from, another short one, comes from Preston Copeland. Hello, Mr. Preston Copeland. How are you? And thank you for this letter, by the way. I love this. I love when I hear about new things, new ideas, especially that intrigue me. So here it goes. Hey, Robert. I caught your talk about Trek trolling the other day, and you made a comment that I haven't been able to get out of my mind. You espouse that bad storytelling has a detrimental effect on storytelling agency as a whole. I found that very compelling. I wonder if you've read Bruno Latour. He is a modern French sociologist that pioneered ACTANT, or Action Network Theory. Long story short, but his work could really supplement your storytelling thesis. I have an MS in folklore studies, and I tend to agree with your idea. Fantastic work, my friend. Keep up the awesome. Well, first of all, Preston, I want to thank you for writing to me and telling me about, first of all, Mr. Bruno Latour. That is who is on the thumbnail for this very chat. I've never heard of Bruno Latour before, and I didn't know what ACTANT, or Action Network Theory, was. So I'm going to share with you what I've discovered in my cursory glance at the interwebs today. between my time working with my sound designers. So I'm going to read you a couple of things. Now, this comes from learningtheories.com. Actor theory, the actor network theory, or ANT. The summary. The actor network theory is a framework and systematic way to consider the infrastructure surrounding technological achievements. It assigns agency to both human and non-human actors. And its originator was Michael Cologne in 1991 and Bruno Latour in 1992, John Law and others. The actor network theory was originally created by French scholars Latour and Cologne as an attempt to understand processes of technological innovation and scientific knowledge creation. Actor network theory can be contrasted with heroic accounts of scientific advance. For example, rather than saying Newton founded the theory of gravitation seemingly as though he were alone in a vacuum, the actor network theory emphasizes and considers all surrounding factors, that no one acts alone. Galileo's past experiences, his colleagues, his connections with the astronomer royal, John Flamsteed, his use of Euclidean geometry, Kepler's astronomy, Galileo's mechanics, his tools, the details of his lab, cultural factors and restrictions placed upon him in his environment, and various other technical and non-technical elements would all be described and considered in his actor network. Actor network theory does not typically attempt to explain why a network exists. It is more interested in the infrastructure of actor networks, how they are formed, how they can fall apart, etc. Actor network theory incorporates what is known as the principle of generalized symmetry. That is, what is human and non-human, e.g. artifacts, organizational structures, should be integrated into the same conceptual framework and assigned equal amounts of agency. In this way, one gains a detailed description of the concrete mechanisms at work that hold the network together, while allowing an impartial treatment of the actors. All right, I'm with them. There are various criticisms held regarding the action network theory. These include the absurdity of assigning agency to non-human actors, that the actor network theory is amoral, that because it assumes the action network theory is immoral, that because it assumes all actors are equal within the network, no accommodations for power imbalances can be made, and that the action network theory leads to useless descriptions that seem pointless. Well, that was interesting. Like, okay, I'm with that. I'd never really come across that before, but I thought that was interesting. Now, I'm going to read you what the Wikipedia says briefly. The actor network theory is a theoretical and methodological, I can't even say that word, approach to social theory where everything in the social and natural worlds exists in constantly shifting networks of relationships. It posits that nothing exists outside those relationships. All the factors involved in a social situation are on the same level, and thus there are no external social forces beyond what and how the network participants interact at present. Thus, objects, ideas, processes, and any other relevant factors are seen as just as important in creating social situations as humans. Okay, that's a little bit from Wikipedia. Now, I wondered, he said ACTANT theory, not action, but Bruno, our French philosopher, was still credited as coming up with this theory, so I was okay. But how did that relate to storytelling? Because he was referring to my questions or my supposition about storytelling. So, ACTANT, and this is also from Wikipedia. In narrative theory, ACTANT is a term from the actantial model of semiotic analysis of narratives. Okay, semiotics. Semiotics is one of my, when I was in college, I loved hearing people that were discussing semiotics because it always seemed such a literary construct. And I was always like, Man, I love semiotics. I love the word semiotics. I guess it's like an onomatopoeia. It sounds like it is to me, at least. And I love the whole idea. What is semiotics? Well, let me take you to the Merriam-Webster dictionary and give you a quick semiotics lesson, what semiotics is, because it's not hard to understand. Semiotics, a definition of semiotics, a general philosophical theory of signs and symbols that deals especially with their function in both artificially constructed and natural languages and comprises syntactics, semantics, and pragmatics. And here are examples of semiotics in a sentence. As Benjamin Eli Gelb seems to have walked into the Laura Pell stage directly from a semiotics course at Brown, and Will Britton brings dignity to the prototypical dumb jock, even if he is often made to do so while wearing one. Or, like those artists, Mr. Leonison pointed curious figures in bright, flat fields of color, adding bits of language, in keeping with a postmodern era in which semiotics and other theories were central elements in art. It's all sort of gobbledygook, right? Or at least I sort of thought so. But anyway, what I found interesting about all of this and why I found this ACTANT network theory sort of pertinent, and I appreciate Preston for bringing this up, is that what I had said in my idea of storytelling is that I found that bad storytelling is detrimental to all of us as a whole. Because if you can't recognize the difference between good and bad storytelling, or in my case, I was pointing to Star Trek, good and bad Star Trek, then Star Trek itself is undermined. What a great Star Trek story is. Now, in my mind, a great Star Trek story is an allegorical tale that illuminates the human condition through a science fiction action adventure context. And that's just my simple definition of what a great Star Trek story is. There is a problem, human ingenuity of some kind. It could be an external force. It could be something that's internal we have to deal with. But in some way, shape, or form, that human interaction, specifically the teamwork of human interaction, members of the United Federation of Planets are able to work together despite their differences to solve problems in what is inherently an uplifting way. And these problems reflect back on human civilization now. It has some kind of reason or some kind of way that it has meaning for us today, and we can understand that. And that's what Star Trek was for 40 years, until, of course, the beginning of the JJ era, starting 10 years ago, where they've gone backwards and tried to redefine or reshape Star Trek to make it more palatable for modern audiences, to broaden its appeal, which, in my mind, when you're first starting to do that, you are undermining the very point of Star Trek. Star Trek was never populist. It was always niche. Just like science fiction is sort of a niche genre, as much as the Post-Geek Singularity has embraced it. I do think that great Star Trek is not for the masses, because great Star Trek is aspirational, which means it's about being better than you can be. It's about not reassuring you that not every human being is going to get the idea that Star Trek is about improving yourself. It's not necessarily about elite people, but it's about being an elite human being, being the best human being that you can be, despite maybe your differences. At least that's the way I've always seen it. And I just thought this idea that he told me about, the action network theory, and about how all of these things contribute to something happening. Like when we come up with great ideas, and I believe that. I mean, it goes back to what I heard about Stanley Kubrick. Stanley Kubrick every day would send his assistant around to every department on a film set. If you've never been on a film set before, there are many different departments. There's the grip and lighting department, which basically lays dolly track, hangs all the lights, makes sure everything works. There's the camera department that makes sure that the lighting department has to make sure the camera department has everything they need to capture the images they want. You have the costume department, you have the makeup department, you've got catering, you've got all of these different departments, which really are a microcosm of our society at large. And that's what's interesting. And when a guy like Stanley Kubrick, who is clearly in charge and clearly a visionary, sees the value in asking anybody on his set if they have any ideas to make the film better, it kind of is that action network theory that even though Kubrick is seen as a genius, Kubrick understood that he was involved. He was part of a continuum, and there are ideas and things to take from that continuum that are worth experiencing and worth being a part of, and are useful. And I feel that way when I tell you that every person you meet has a story to tell that you haven't heard. I mean that. I mean that there's somebody that has an experience. Everybody has an experience or has a point of view or has seen something you haven't seen. And they might not even know what they have to offer. But if you, as a person, always, I look at the world as I don't expect the world to be the way I want it to be. I expect the world to be the way it is. And my job as a human being, as a part of our human civilization, is to go out into the world and hopefully contribute to it in some meaningful way. And then also have the world and the people in it contribute to me. And in order to do that, you have to be open-minded. You have to realize that there's people out there, there's experiences, even walking down a sidewalk, you never know what you're going to see looking in whatever direction that's going to somehow spark an idea. It's going to make you consider something you've never considered before, or you might see a flower you haven't seen before. You might see a bird landing on a tree branch, or you might see a bee pollinating a flower. You might see a car you've never seen before. Who knows what you're going to see in the world out there, and who knows how just a glimpse of something could change your life. And that's all part of that network. And my supposition, and I'd never thought about it really before until I really said it on my episode about trolling, is that, you know, a great story has so much more meaning than might at first glance. You know, to me, collectively, I've read so many different great stories, and they've all contributed. They're sort of like the mycelial network of ideas, you know. And I think that it's important that storytelling is good. You know, and I understand when you're dealing with issues like money and budget and time, things might not be as good as you want them to be. And it's compromised. But I think great storytelling, and we have so much of it now on television. There's so much great storytelling, also in the movies. I mean, people lament the fact that, oh, we don't have the great movies of the 70s anymore, like The Godfather, or The Conversation, or All the President's Men, or so many. You know, but pick your favorite network, pick your favorite 70s movie. But there's still great movies being made. There's great television. People have always said that the novelistic approach to television now, it has supplanted the great movies of the old days. I don't know if that's true, but we have a responsibility, especially when you're spending as much money as they're spending on Star Trek Discovery. You have a responsibility not just to the people that are paying for the show, but to society at large, to tell great stories. And great stories are hard, and I understand. But I was saying that, you know, when stories aren't great, it diminishes us all. It takes away from the fabric of our society. Now, who is to say what is a good story or what isn't a good story? I don't know. I've always believed that great storytelling is self-evident. Now, people don't necessarily have to recognize it, and people are a lot less tolerant because most people, they don't spend a lot of time contemplating stories. They're too busy taking care of their kids, taking care of their jobs. I get it. I understand. But great storytelling does add to the tapestry of the human experience. And I think bad storytelling diminishes the human experience. And I think for the most part, no matter how educated you are, you can still recognize the truth in great storytelling. Great storytelling is self-evident. It's not up for debate. And sure, there's somebody that hates every movie. There's people that hate The Shawshank Redemption. There's people that hate Amelie. I get it. But I do think that great storytelling elevates us all. And that's why I thought the action network theory is the ACTANT network theory is very interesting. I'd never heard this before, and I really enjoyed finding out about it. And like when people send me letters like that, and I learned something that I didn't know before, I love that. So please keep that kind of stuff coming. I love finding out things that I don't know. Matthew Gaudet is here. He says that Star Trek is made by two companies. A merger has to happen for them to make canon Trek again. I am of the opinion that Berman Trek is never coming back, though it ended in 2005. Maybe. Maybe not. Who knows what the future has? Vesna's here. Hello, Vesna. Vesna's all the way from Bosnia, Sarajevo. Hello, everybody. Here, the time has changed, so I'm still confused. What is the real time? Well, the real time on the Pacific Coast is 2:30 in the afternoon. Right now, it is 2:30. Willow says, hello, everyone. Willow asks, is it for daylight savings? We had that like 2 weeks ago in Canada and the US. That is true. That's interesting that daylight savings time is not up to par. Or daylight savings time in Bosnia is different. Dale M, that old smooth talker, says, what's up with the two most beautiful Robservations women, Vesna Lukic and Willow Yang? Great to see you. Long time no see, Vesna. Listen to that, Dale M. Dude, you can't exclude all the other lovely ladies that are here in the chat too. But anyway, writer BL Ali says, Dale M, what am I, chopped liver? That's very funny. Let's see. What do we got going? Terry Flynn, thanks for the letter, buddy. Appreciate it. Everyone's saying hello to each other. The Terry Flynn says the EU voted to abolish daylight saving times last week, but of course we may be leaving. Laugh out loud. Yeah, Brexit. I'm fascinated by Brexit, everyone. I really am fascinated by it all. I keep watching everybody's opinions about it. It's crazy. I wouldn't want to be your PM. That's all I know. Brian Eng says, if Disney bought Star Trek, would that be good or bad? Oh, well, you know what? If Disney bought Star Trek and they found somebody who could be the Kevin Feige of Star Trek, it could be good. And that person had a lot of creative latitude. I think that would be great. But who knows? I don't know. Joe Flix is here. He says, congratulations. I don't know what that's for. I might have missed something early on in the chat. Learning Disabled Spock is here. One of the lead designers for Star Citizen will be at WonderCon talking about the creative process in games. I would love to have seen that. I mean, I don't play Star Citizen. People have sent me Star Citizen things, and it seems like a game I'd really love, but its creative process and how it was crowdfunded has been fascinating. All the people up in arms and how long it took. I know those things. Tom Grocott said, hey, Rob, unrelated from movies, but what advice would you give to someone who's losing their hair? My hair has been thinning for 2 years, and I'm scared to just shave it off. I'm no Thanos. Well, Tom, I don't know anything really about hair loss, as you can see. I mean, luckily my hair doesn't seem to be going anywhere. It just seems to be changing color to ashen gray. I don't know anything about hair loss, but I think now it's been proven, whether you're Bruce Willis, whether you're Thanos, whoever you are, you can rock the dome. I think trying to fight hair loss is probably inevitable. It's probably futile because hair loss is inevitable. But find a close cut that works for you, something cool. But I don't know much about Rogaine or there's transplants, there's plugs, there's all kinds of things. I just don't know much about hair loss. If anybody does, please write me. I'd be happy to share that with you. I could pass that along to Tom. Real Girl 26. See, no one's talking about Real Girl 26. I'm talking about Real Girl 26. I love her name. I want to know what happened to Real Girls 1 through 25, though. Where'd they go? That's a bummer you had to miss the con today, but yay, you are further with your film. Look, man, I can't tell you how happy it was for me to hand off a 6 terabyte drive full of goodness. And I can't wait to sit back and see what another artist does with the movie. I can't wait. Koba says the Donner cut isn't even the complete movie. It isn't even his true vision. I agree, Koba. Like everyone's talking about the Snyder cut issue. I've talked about that earlier, obviously. But I agree, Koba. The Donner cut is a compromise. And then Agent Black says the Donner cut is well worth watching, though. I agree. I do agree. They spent lots of money. I don't think the Snyder cut's in any position to watch and enjoy. But who knows? Anthony Gonzalez says, guys, I'd just like to say before you order stuff online, visit your local bookstores, record stores, and comic book stores. Anthony, yes, sir. I totally agree with you. Kudos to you. Matthew Gaudette says the film was 6 months away from being completed after they had already spent $300 million. The Dark Side and Apocalypse scenes were not even shot. Yep, it's true. Totally agree. Koba says, I mean, to quote Peter Griffin, what was the deal with the giant cellophane S that Superman throws at the bad guy? Your guess is as good as mine. I didn't know that could happen. Agent Black says, Matthew Gaudette, I tried to watch Justice League 3 times and switched it off before 60 minutes every time. It's a sack of shit. Zack Snyder couldn't save that. I don't know. I think it was a much different movie. He makes films with a different feel. I just don't understand why you change directors midstream like that. It wasn't like Batman v Superman was a disaster. It just didn't gross $1 billion. They spent a lot of money and had unrealistic expectations. Learning Disabled Spock says, Leftovers is Lindelof, right? Yes, sir. I gave up on the first episode because it felt so pretentious, and he'd already stated they would never explain what caused it. I know. I couldn't. I read the book, though. I had to watch it. And the final solution they came up with was utterly disappointing, although I did like the final season better, especially than the second season. Willow Yang says, I just left the room to get tea, and I just realized that Rob's reading my letter. Willow, how can I not want to read your letters? If only because they're so well written. I enjoy it. I hope, sometimes I'm not the best reader, but I hope I do justice to your thoughts. I can't even say, but Vyacheslav Rozantic says, I wrote my college thesis on Watchmen. I'd love to read that. Send that to me, son. Please email it to me. I'd love to read your college thesis. That would be great. Agent Black says Watchmen was a parody and a satire, and it was a serious superhero story. So it was all of those things all at once. I think that is pretty cool. The Wolverine is here. Snicked. It would be interesting to see a finished Snyder cut to see the overarching story that would have been told from Man of Steel to Justice League. I agree, man. I loved how Justice League picked up right at the end of Man of Steel. I thought that was, not Justice League, Batman v Superman, Dawn of Justice. I love the opening of that movie. And again, I really enjoy the feeling. I think Batman v Superman has a lot of problems. The Ultimate Cut's a lot better, I think. But the feel of the movie, just the feel that it elicits, there's something mythic about it that I quite enjoy. And I really like Man of Steel a lot. I look at it as a science fiction first contact story. So it's not, maybe it's not the best Superman story. Willow, you sent me a super chat. Thank you. I just got in trouble for using the word epistatic network in a paper because the reviewers thought network is too abstract. I hate the word now. Network is abstract. To network something is to put different things together. You network them together. What's abstract about that? I don't understand. Culture Inject says, hi, Rob. Joss Whedon's new HBO show, The Nevers, is shaping up to be something special. Seamus McGarvey is the cinematographer, and Game of Thrones EP Bernadette Caulfield is the producer. Excited. Hey, man, I'm a Joss Whedon fan. I like Dollhouse. I love Buffy and Angel. So awesome. Real Girl 26 says favorite 70s movies, Jaws, Star Wars, and Close Encounters of the Third Kind. There are probably a couple of more, but these are the ones I'm thinking of. I agree. Those are great movies, but I don't think those are the great popular films of the 70s. I think the great entertainments of the 70s, but the films of the 70s I love a lot. I mean, in terms of going back to science fiction, things like I do love Zardoz and Logan's Run. I love Rollerball. The Godfather 1 and 2 are my two favorite movies of all time. I love Network. I love The French Connection. I love One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. I mean, there's so many great. All That Jazz is one of my top 5 favorite movies. That came out in 1979. Alien, of course, Dawn of the Dead, and Phantasm. I love Texas Chainsaw Massacre. There's so many incredible films of the 70s. It's hard to, I could give you a list of 100 probably. Let's see. Matthew Godet says, I could see if it was 70% finished like the Donner cut of Superman 2 and all it needed was special effects and ADR and Foley, but we have no idea beyond the fact an assembly cut exists. I agree. That's all he said that exists. Robot Shlomo says, check out Jonathan Pye for some interesting opinions on Brexit. Is he the guy who does the newscasts that he interrupts? Like they're done shooting and then I love that guy. I love his videos. I watch all of them. And yes, I just watched one the other day. It was great. It was great about Brexit. If that's the guy Jonathan Pye is the guy I'm thinking of. 13 Lex Love or Lufor, I don't know, says, hello, everyone. Hello, 13 Lex. Have I seen you before? Are you new? Welcome. Jaden Core says, Agent Black is most likely realistically that the Snyder Cut is in a state that it's in a state that is just at the cutoff for worth investing more money or dropping. So it's just waiting for the moment to generate hype. I don't know, man. It's hard to say. You know, as a filmmaker myself, it's movies in early stages of editorial are they're hard to watch. Brian Eng says, when is the G list coming? I missed your list shows. You know what? I'm going to get back to my list shows. People have been asking about that. Next weekend, I'm going to bring back the list shows. For those who are new and don't know, early on in Robservations, when I was looking to build up my audience, I was doing my favorite, not actually all of my favorite movies, beginning with the letter G, or even the best movies, but certain films of every letter of the alphabet that I just liked. Things I thought were interesting that maybe not a lot of people knew about or liked or loved or whatever. I had this sort of eclectic list, and I stopped at the letter F, and I need to get back into it and start at G, because that would be good. And people keep asking. Learning Disabled Spock says, the best advice I have about hair loss, just live with it. You can torture yourself trying to get it back, or you can realize it affects a lot of us guys and choose to live with it. I think that's great advice. The word entropy, like semiotics, entropy is another favorite word of mine. There's nothing we can do. Aaron Johnson says, hello, Rob. What is your opinion on the film Thunderbolt and Lightfoot? Clint Eastwood and Jeff Bridges are terrific. Interesting. Now, Thunderbolt and Lightfoot was the first movie directed by Michael Cimino. And Jeff Bridges really looks back on that film with great fondness. And he liked working with Cimino. I like Thunderbolt and Lightfoot a lot. As a matter of fact, I realized I bought the Deer Hunter. Studio Canal put out a 4-disc special edition of the Deer Hunter, much like their John Carpenter discs. And there's some good documentaries I hadn't seen. And of course, Jeff Bridges is also in Heaven's Gate, which was Michael Cimino's big debacle, which Criterion has released in a restored version that actually is very much worth seeing. So I enjoy Michael Cimino's work. I really like Thunderbolt and Lightfoot a lot. I also really like his movie that Warner Archive put out recently, Year of the Dragon from the 80s with John Lone and Mickey Rourke, which a lot of people branded as racist when it first came out, but I like it. Mark Kavanaugh says, what did you think of Love and Death and Robots? Very hit and miss, but I really enjoyed watching it all. I thought it was great. I mean, overall, I thought it was great. A lot of fun. Kanga Jenga says, Zack Snyder shoots everything. I don't know how he can make that more clear. He confirmed that his cut is 214 minutes, or it's 2 hours and 14 minutes, but 214 minutes. But on the matter of VFX, he gave one word: incomplete. That's a big incomplete, especially when you're making a superhero movie. 13 Lex Love, or LE4, says, Star Trek was a show that had the ability to teach a 12-year-old child what a temporal causality loop is as a theory and still make it exceptionally entertaining. What are these showmakers doing? I'll tell you one thing, they're certainly not telling you what a temporal causality loop is with how they've treated time travel. Yeah, I don't know. Magic K says Annabelle is a new DC Cinematic Universe first lady. Well, for those, when I saw Aquaman and I saw Annabelle in Aquaman at the bottom of the ocean, I was like, yes. I thought it was great that James Wan tied Aquaman into the Conjuring universe. And man, that's canon. That's canonical. And how cool would that? Well, we saw the crossover. It was Aquaman, but I'd love to see that. Vekaslav Rozandic. I can't, this is another Serbian. This is another Bosnian Serbian. It's Serbo-Croatian, isn't it? And that's tough for me to pronounce. I'm afraid Dune might fail financially because just like Star Trek, it's for a niche audience, and a big studio, not Villeneuve, might not understand that. I think they understand that, but I think that they're looking at Dune as being like Game of Thrones-esque, and I think the audience is primed to like it. At least that's what I tend to think. I hope so, because I can't wait to see Dune. Cannot wait. Terry Flynn says, yes, Rob, that's him. Okay, good. I was right. I love that guy. His videos are great. They're awesome. Joseph Eric says, I did not hit her. It's not true. It's bullshit. I did not hit her. I did not. Oh, hi, Rob. That's very fun. Of course, that's from The Room and The Disaster Artist as well. Real Girl 26 says, thanks, Rob. I picked the name because of my love of filmmaking. I wish YouTube would have let me just be Real Girl, but it was already taken, so I added my birth date. Oh, that's cool. I like that. That's good. Real Girl 26. So there isn't Real Girl 1 through 25. I like that. Shazam Chavez says, I missed 40 minutes. That's why you can go back and watch later. Read by Nature says, you can see it in the scene where Superman flew with the block of flats above his head. There was no attempt to stick to Snyder's internal logic established in Man of Steel or Batman v Superman. I know, man. Justice League is probably the second most disappointing movie I've ever seen after Return of the Jedi. Bunyan Snipe says, one of the great tragic endings in Thunderbolt and Lightfoot. Well, I wasn't going to say that, but I agree with you. Alexander Wilson says, I thought Green Book was terrible. It wasn't even about the real Green Book. It was about a good racist. They used historically incorrect racial terms and bad dialogue. How did it win so many awards? Well, okay. You know, I watched the movie and I enjoyed it. Now, I, again, wasn't aware of all of those things. I mean, I got the general gist of it all, but I thought watching a racist sort of come to terms with, I mean, forget the historical events. You know, it said based on it or inspired by a true story. I still think the story is valid. You know, it was really about two men getting to know one another. And it wasn't just about racism. I mean, there was elements of sexuality in it, but I can understand how people wouldn't like that movie. I mean, I enjoyed it. I literally didn't see it in the theater. I didn't see it. I just saw it last week on Blu-ray, and I enjoyed it. You know, I enjoyed it for what it was. But it might not be the greatest movie in the world, which I tend to agree with. Let's see. What else? Real Girl 26 says, my knowledge of 70 films is limited somehow. I've mostly seen older films and films from the 80s, though, now. I'm not sure how that happened. Well, what's interesting is, look, you know, it's hard enough to keep up with what's going on nowadays. But there are so many. Usually when you go to film school, you have it drilled into you that the best period of American motion pictures were the 40s and the 70s. So I don't know if that's necessarily true, but there was some really groundbreaking movies that started coming out in the late 60s because you had so many maverick directors bucking the studio system, which was sort of moribund by that point. So the movies that were happening starting in the late 60s and the 70s are pretty extraordinary. And if you love movies, go dig into the 70s films, because there's a lot of them. You can just Google best films of the 70s, you know, the 100 greatest movies of the 70s, or you know, you go look at like the AFI list of the 100 greatest movies, and there's a lot of movies from the 70s. So Terry Flynn says, how to get more ladies here. Mention your retweet of that Anson Mount tweet. I certainly appreciated that view too. That's very funny. But you guys go look for that. I retweeted somebody's Anson Mount tweet, and it was very funny. Anson Mount, let's just say Anson Mount. He's got a great ass. He's got great hair too, so I have no problem admitting, you know, I have a huge man crush on John Barrowman. I'm a straight guy, but I've got tendencies. You know, it's kind of like when Christian Slater said in the great movie True Romance, written by Quentin Tarantino and directed by Tony Scott. He's telling this girl at the beginning of the movie, he's talking about his love for Elvis, and he actually says, pardon my French, well, I'm not gay, but if I had to fuck a guy, I'd fuck Elvis. You know, and I think it's okay. I think it's okay for us men to be able to have those kinds of opinions, because, you know, after all, John Barrowman is a beautiful man, and I feel the same way. I love John Barrowman. There's a lot of guys I have man crushes on. I'm not afraid to admit it. And Anson Mount in that outfit, he's got a good ass. What that says about me, I don't know, but there you go. Mike Conrad says, Discovery is probably the best looking series being produced today. Maybe they should take some of that money and invest in some better writers. I agree with you. I think Discovery is a beautifully made television show. I think the direction has been a little ostentatious and a little showy, really showy. But again, it is a no doubt beautifully made TV show. And I love the fact they've switched to the widescreen aspect ratio this season. That's cool. What TV show's done that? That's amazing. So I'm stoked. Victory Unlimited, once again, supporting the show. Thank you so much, first of all. But Victory always has something good to say, too. I've been rewatching old detective and film noir movies lately. Love the sparse dialogue and the great titles. Mickey Spillane's My Gun is Quick comes to mind. Do you have any favorites in this genre? Oh, my God. I mean, as I mentioned on my Ds, you got to start with Double Indemnity, which is like the Star Wars of film noir movies. I mean, there's so many great film noir movies. You know, everything from Touch of Evil. I mean, just the great classics. Uh, I'm drawing a blank now, but film noir there's literally hundreds of film noir films. I mean, and it covers a wide range of subject matter, really. But and there's great French noir. There's even Italian noir films. But now, why am I drawing a blank game? A blank. My Gun is Quick is a great title. I've never seen My Gun is Quick. Gun Crazy, but film noir is an incredible genre of film, and everybody should delve into that. Let's see. Learning Disabled Spock says it takes a special kind of mean to have the ability to time travel, use it to save your daughter, and then mock a Starfleet captain about his unfortunate future. Yeah, could you believe that? I was stunned by that. I'm like, why don't you help him? Again, I don't want to go off on a rant, but I cannot dislike Discovery more. I can't. Donnie Pearson says, hello, Rob and all from your greater Seattle area. I'm watching bits of Mariner baseball on Root Sports and bits of Game 1 of ESPN's MLB doubleheader, Cubs versus Rangers. I may be a Seattle sport fan, but I'll always be a DFW sport fan at heart and an Oklahoman at heart. Well, Donnie, I appreciate these updates from Seattle. keep giving them to us. You're lying. I never hit you. You're tearing me apart, Lisa. Koba says it's because the 40s is Citizen Kane and the 70s has Godfather. It's true, but it's not just Citizen Kane and the Godfather. Citizen Kane was groundbreaking from a lot of... Actually, I consider Citizen Kane kind of a noir film. It's not really noir because there's no guns and there's no femme fatales. Well, I guess there is actually a femme fatale. But it's still groundbreaking from the way it was made. And The Godfather is just an epic story. Both are epic stories. I mean, I'd like to think that it's the stories that were being told. It was the combination of the art of cinema and the stories that were being told in the 40s and the 70s that give people that opinion. Agent Black says the 70s cinema is my go-to now. French Connection, Sorcerer, etc. It's the perfect antidote to modern CG overload. Oh, I totally agree with you. I mean, look at The Exorcist, one of the great horror films ever made. It's completely talking about verisimilitude. I mean, yeah, some of the effects are dated now, but because Friedkin applied his documentary style, it feels like what you're watching is real, like you're eavesdropping on this horrible experience that's happening to this poor family. Vegetable Tube says, is there any news about King Conan, the King Conan movie? Fan cast a new Wolverine. That's tough, man. I don't know. The thing about Wolverine is what's really interesting. In the comics, Wolverine's short. He's like 5 feet tall. That's how come Colossus is able to throw him with the fastball special. And, even when they tried to do that in X-Men 3, it just doesn't work. I mean, Hugh Jackman's a strapping 6-foot+ dude. And I think if you went Wolverine, you need to, I can't really think of somebody who's short, somebody, who could maybe, this might be a little outrageous. Aaron Paul could be ferocious, I think, as Wolverine. Give him facial hair. Maybe he could be, he's got an intensity to him. I could see him playing Wolverine. He might be too young. I don't know. That's just what came to the top of my head. I don't know if that's good or bad, but that's what came to the top of my head. Dave Atkins says, have you seen a Korean film called Psychokinesis about a father that gets superpowers to help his daughter? It's on Netflix. Someone else asked me about that. I have not watched that yet. I love Korean cinema. I will watch that. It's funny when things come up more than once, I have to seek them out and find them. So I will do that. Crixus Maximus says to Willow Yang, I recall some guy tried to engineer some sort of myostatin inhibitor with CRISPR and actually injected himself with it. Outcome unknown. Well, that's part of a movie. There you go. That's could be the sequel to Split, or not Split, of not Split. The movie that who directed Cube? It was a movie that Joel Silver released. Why am I not? I'm drawing a blank. Alexander Wilson says, if Beale Street Could Talk was better than Green Book and tackled race relations in America, but it didn't get near the same love. Yeah, it's kind of a downer, though. Americans love our happy endings. And I think that, I mean, even Green Book could have done without the Christmas ending, but still, but I get it. I mean, if Beale Street Could Talk was based on a great literary work, and yeah, so I don't disagree with you. Culture Inject says, hi, Rob, Joss Whedon's new HBO show, The Nevers. I already read that, but hello again, Culture Inject, because I liked that. Brian Eng says, what's that movie Rob was talking about where every time a guy wakes up, it alternates between his wife and his son dying? I don't know. What was I talking about? What was the movie? His wife and his son dying. I'm not sure. Tom Hardy for Wolverine. Wow, that's not bad. But I don't know. Is he too old? Do they need to get somebody younger? I'm not sure. Imagine if Reagan McNeil and Damian Thorne had a baby. That would be a crossover between The Exorcist and the Omen films, which that could be interesting. Matthew Gaudette says, want to talk about cartoon versus real? Compare the original Blade Runner with its sequel. The original was shot practically and looked like a real lived-in universe. Well, a lot of Blade Runner 2049 was shot real too, practical on real sets. And I think I know what you're saying though, because the like the extras, I mean, they shot a lot of Blade Runner on the Warner Brothers backlot. They redressed the Warner Brothers backlot, so it was an actual city street, but certainly not a real working street. They made it look real. I think the fact that it was so crowded was one of the things that sold that idea. But I love, the thing about Blade Runner 2049 is that takes place 30 years after the original Blade Runner. And humanity, one of the things I loved about Blade Runner 2049 is humanity's on the way out. We're dying out. We don't have enough food. I mean, it's sort of I think it's subtly presented in the film, but the whole thing about what is trying to be accomplished is getting replicants to reproduce, so a remnant of humanity will survive. And I think that's what that film, the underlying message of that movie is that mankind is out the door. Entropy is about to have its way with us. So I don't know. Zac Efron for Wolverine. You know what, Ryder BL Alley? That isn't a bad idea. Again, with the facial hair, he's got intensity. I think Zac Efron's a much better actor than people give him credit for. I think that's not bad casting. He certainly can have the physique for it. That could be really, really good. Bunyan Snipe says, I think Emil Hirsch would be a perfect Logan. That's not bad casting either. I don't think that's bad. I like that. Casey Affleck as Wolverine. Again, I also think probably maybe too old. Will Yang says Aaron Paul's 2 years younger than Tom Hardy. You might be right about that. Shazam Chavez says, speaking of awake or woke, Jason Isaacs is my if I were gay option. That's funny. I want to, that's something I want to hear about. What is everyone's if I were gay option? If you had to sleep with a guy. I think that's funny. And I think we're woke enough to have these conversations and not be threatened by it. Who cares? I've got lots of gay friends. I play this game with them. They always ask me, if you could sleep with somebody, who's your type? They're trying to figure out who's my type. Hey, Rob, have you seen the Netflix series Kingdom? This is what Bob says. It's a Korean-made project. Think zombie apocalypse in the 16th century. I've seen the first episode. I can't wait to watch the rest of it. It's scrumptious and sumptuous in terms of its production design. I can't wait. Real Girl 26 says, let's go with The Rock as Wolverine. No, I'm kidding. I don't want him as Wolverine. I think this is next go-round. It needs to be someone shorter. I agree. Somebody fierce and short, like the real Wolverine is, and that's why he's named Wolverine. Learning Disabled Spock says Rob Lowe. Rob Lowe is very pretty. If you guys want to see a really great movie, and when I say great movie, I mean great B movie, a movie that's a lot of fun, is a movie called Bad Influence, starring Rob Lowe and James Spader. Trust me, it's if you want to see a great double bill from the 80s, 90s, I think Bad Influence is from the 80s, and then Dream Lover with Machen and Mick and James Spader. That's from the 90s, but you got to get the Laserdisc or the videotape version because it's uncut. Believe me, you'll want to see it uncut. But it's a great double bill. Dream Lover, not the Christy McNichol Dream Lover, but the Dream Lover with James Spader and Machen and Mick, and Bad Influence with Rob Lowe and James Spader. It's the ultimate Spader fest. Check it out. Oh, Elizabeth Bell, my own girlfriend, is on this chat, and she says Robert Pattinson. Well, isn't Robert Pattinson supposed to be playing Batman? But Robert Pattinson is not a bad choice either, and he can rock that facial hair. He can do that. But you know what? I don't believe Robert Pattinson can ultimately, because Robert Pattinson is not a wolf and he's not a Wolverine and he's not a character that's anywhere close to that. We all know Robert Pattinson's a vampire. So just saying. Read by Nature says, I wish they had moved ahead with an earlier version of X-Men. Bob Hoskins was almost Wolverine. I don't know if that would work out. Dax Jacobson says Rob Lowe on The West Wing is not bad. I loved him on that. I loved him on The West Wing. The West Wing is the best Star Trek show that's not called Star Trek. Bartomac is here from Ireland. If I was gay, option, the actor from The Crying Game, one of the film's most surprising developments. That would be Jade Davidson, who also was in Stargate. I can understand that. I see where you're going with that, Bartomac. I feel you. I know where that is. You know, I'm actually a big fan of ContraPoints, if we're going to go in that direction. Natalie Wynn. So if you guys don't watch ContraPoints, I love ContraPoints' videos. Natalie Wynn's videos. She's great. Writer BL Ali says, you know, a damn good looking guy, Michael Ealy. He is a damn good looking guy. Crixus Maximus says, happy birthday plus a day or two to the Batman. We must celebrate. Yesterday, they celebrated at WonderCon the 80th birthday of the Batman. Yes, the character of the Batman is 80 years old. Crazy. Learning Disabled Spock says, Jay Davidson would be a close second. Man, you guys, the Post-Geek Singularity community never ceases to amaze and delight me. I love this I love this conversation. This is great. I love that you people are not afraid to go there. This is great. I love it. I like the fact that you guys are liberal-minded and open. Mark Termel says, hey, Rob, love all your chats. We need more people like you. Well, thank you, Mark. I appreciate you saying that. I try, I wish I could be like Multiple Man and just make more of me, then I could get more stuff done during the day. Unfortunately, I can't do that. But I appreciate you being here, and thanks for the kind words about the chat. Listen, guys, I am going to cut this one short today. It's short being over an hour. But I am going to Las Vegas to meet up with John Campea at CinemaCon. CinemaCon used to be called Show West, and a lot of the exhibitors, theater owners, come and it's not like a science fiction convention. They tried to rebrand it. It was called Show West. Now it's CinemaCon. But they have, for 3 days, they have events and lectures all about the state of exhibition and filmmaking. It should be interesting. I'm going to try and do live chats probably every night, because during the day, for the next 3 days, all the events are during the day. So I won't be able to do morning chats or evening chats, but I'm going to take some equipment. They might not look or sound as nice as these do, because I really don't want to take this mic. Maybe I will take a different mic. But yeah, so I will be coming to you from Las Vegas, Nevada this week. And yeah, so if you're in Las Vegas, by the way, if you live close to Las Vegas, I don't know if you are. If anybody wants to get together in the evening, share a meal or what have you, please do so. Send me an email or contact me at theburnetwork.net. So all of that, I'm glad. Thank you for everybody who wrote in. Thank you, Willow, for another fantastic letter. I feel like I should make you like a daily commentator, Willow. We should do some kind of I feel like with some of you, I should do a Google Hangout and just get as many of you as possible, and we can do like a Skype live Robservations hangout with you regular members of the Post-Geek Singularity community, so I can see all your lovely faces and know who I'm really talking to. So if you guys are interested in that, contact me, and maybe we can set it up for a couple weeks or something. My birthday is May 15th. Maybe we can do it for that. I don't know. Or maybe we can do it after Endgame, before Endgame. It'd be kind of fun, since so many of you I talk to, I'd love to hear your voices and see your lovely faces, because really, why not? Anyway, so I'm going to bring this chat to a close. Thanks for listening to me, and thanks for sending me, Preston, thank you for sending me in things I'd never heard of before. I love that, the action network theory. I think that's great. I actually believe in that to a certain extent. I understand the criticisms of, I think the systems that people exist in, the people's lives and their influences, all of that plays a part. It's all this ongoing continuum that's churning all the time. So yes, I don't think Sir Isaac Newton discovered gravity just because he'd never thought about it before and he went, Eureka! There was a lot of things going on in that guy's head. So anyway, as always, remember, every person you meet has a story to tell, something to tell. Every person you meet has a story to tell you haven't heard. All you have to do is listen and make their story a part of your action network. Make it work for you, because I believe in that. So anyway, thanks a lot. Thanks for all the ongoing support for the channel. I really very much appreciate it. And I will, next time I talk to you, I'm going to be talking to you from my hotel room in Caesar's Palace. Amazing. I haven't been to Caesar's Palace, and John Campea, he pulled some magic strings and got us a pretty good deal. So good for John. John's like, when I think of Vegas, I think of John Campea, believe it or not. I know some of you are like, what? But it's true. So I'll be coming at you from my hotel room in Las Vegas. Maybe I'll have a view. I don't know if I'm high up or have a good room. I have no idea. But if I have a view, I'll point the camera out and I'll use downtown Vegas or the Strip as a back. I guess it's the Strip because it's Caesar. So who knows? But anyway, maybe I'll do a live video just wandering around. They have strict rules about where I can take cameras. You know, they have strict rules about cameras in casinos in general. So I might have to just stream from my room. But you never know. Anyway, guys, girls, gentle people, non-binary folks, however you identify, thank you for being here. Thanks for joining the Post-Geek Singularity community. I love talking to you. Have a better Sunday. And now that you are at least in Bosnia, in Sarajevo, you now are now into daylight savings time like Vesna is. So that's good for all of you. And think about it. If you want to participate in the live chat, I think that would be fun. Again, contact me on the Burnettwork.net. Follow us on Burnettwork on Twitter or Robservations on Twitter. Find me, send me more things. I love hearing from you. And with that, I will end this chat. Thanks very much for participating and being here. It wouldn't be a chat without you. Thanks.